introduction. So if it's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Can we start?
Great. So welcome everyone. I'm Carol Raso from Elderwerks. I'm the Senior Strategy Director and delighted today to be presenting with my colleague, Gail Niksic, who's our Vice President at Elderwerks. A quick note first is that we are recording, which you should know. And we do not have the ability to share slides because obviously it is a specialized program put together. However, there are some resources and information you may be interested in, and you're welcome to take a picture of that slide with your phone as we're going along, or if you need a handout or send out on that later, we can, on that particular slide or resource, we can arrange that. We were going to have initially, or had planned, that Erin Vogt, who is the Palliative Care Coordinator at Transitions Palliative Care and Hospice, was going to be a presenter. And unfortunately, she is ill today. So as you all probably know, we have another viruses going around, not COVID, but other things. So unfortunately, she won't be with us. But we do want to let you know we've collaborated with Transitions, Palliative, and Hospice on all of the slides. And we do, of course, value their partnership and work together. So more importantly, we want to thank Maureen Centennial, who is the special service or senior
special services.
Thank you. Senior special services. That's a lot of S's, Maureen.
Yeah.
With Northwest Community Healthcare, and we're so delighted that she's with us today. And Maureen very graciously reached out to us and asked us if we could do this presentation. I would mention quickly that we did send it out, I believe, as the ABCs and 123's of caregiving today and tomorrow. You'll see the slide title is Elder Care 101. Basically, we are really talking about the same thing. So we're going to go ahead. Maureen, we'd like you to go ahead and introduce yourself. And we want to also thank you for the collaboration and partnership with Arlington Heights Senior Center as well. We value both of your partnerships. So thank you. Maureen, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. I'm Maureen Centeno, Senior Services Specialist. I think I said Senior Special Services. So I was messing up my own title.
I love it.
Northwest Community Healthcare, and we bring programs out to the community. And Elderwerks is a fabulous resource for us and has provided presentations for us quite many times. So I'm happy to have Carol and Gail here to lead us into this very important topic of caregiving. So thank you.
You're welcome. Our pleasure. Also, I just wanted to mention that if you do have questions throughout the presentation, please do put them in the chat, and Carol and I will answer those questions as we go along. As a reminder, if you need a little bit more time to take a picture of some of those resources on your phone, again, put that in the chat and we'll spend a little bit more time. So hopefully technology is going to work well. I'm going to start to share my screen in the presentation, and we are about to start. Okay. Do we see this? Do we see it on there?
Perfect, Gail. Yes, it's excellent. Thank you. I'm going to take my video off of here on my side.
Okay. I was about to do that. Okay. Do you see the first slide?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
You're
Okay.
file now.
All righty. From the beginning. Here we go.
Perfect.
Okay. Perfect is right. Do you have that up there?
Elder Care Continuum.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Do we want to share a little bit about that?
Well, I think that what we want to talk about really today is how things change in our lives. And we have ongoing daily discussions about this with families that contact us. At Elderworks, we can help seniors, families, and professionals, which we do ongoing, finding any kind of services they need. And often when we get a call, it is immediately when there's already an emergency. So what has happened is that things progress, as we know, and the continuum is we go from being very independent to what's going to be next. So being able to be aware of resources, aware of what some of those signs might be, and options going ahead really allows us to go forward. Gail, do you want to show us our next slide? Gail, did you want to talk about this a little bit?
We're on I just want to see, I'm looking at my next screen in terms of the health ability to function in terms of, I think this just gives you a landscape of what there is in terms of perhaps individuals who might not, the function of where they're at right now, what the options are if they were starting at home and then possibly needing some assistance, when they're home, also considering a retirement community, perhaps assisted living, and then nursing home and end of life. I think it's important, people always ask in terms of cost of care, when there's, again, at the beginning, there isn't any care involved, we have $0 involved, some home assistance, there's some money involved. Also, again, when you're needing more care, if you were to move to a retirement, assisted living, or nursing home, as the cost, increases for that. But I think we get asked a lot about this in terms of what kind of benefits might be out there to help pay for this care. Again, if it's for someone to remain in their home, or if they were to transition to a community, or even get what type of community services are. So of course, there's always the private funds. There's something called Veterans Aid and Assistance Benefits. We actually have a whole site explaining what the VA benefits are and how someone might qualify. People don't actually know about it. There's some community services out there. Social Security is, and of course, added help for any type of care. There's family caregivers, and there's Medicaid, and then there's Medicare. And we're going to go into the depth with this as we continue throughout the presentation so you can get some clarification.
Right, so don't be overwhelmed.
Yeah, not at all. Okay.
This, I think, gives us a little bit better idea. It's a clear idea of going from being very functional at home and doing what you need to do every day and having your own routine in life and continuing on. So it's much what we just talked about a few moments ago. I think one of the most important things that people don't realize is that unless you have long-term care insurance, which in my experience with most of the families we work with, that is often not the case. Everything is pretty much out-of-pocket private pay, meaning that if you are going to bring in a private caregiver, it's private pay at home. Does not cover by insurance or Medicare. If you're going into a senior community or you need further care going on, it is not covered through Medicare. I'm talking about now if you're in a senior community where you're going to go into other housing, meals, and that type of thing. That's all private pay. And many times people don't realize that. There are some other limited options for that, and we'll talk about those as we go along.
Okay, all righty. So now we're going to talk about hospitals.
So I think that we have more than probably 50 to 60% of the calls we get, something has happened, and now one of the loved ones, the person we're caring for, has had a fall, or they have some other type of problem and have to go into the hospital. And this is sort of an overview of hospital situations and what's available when you're in the hospital, because I think people don't really understand that. I think we have a question here. What is the average rate for 24/7 care at home? Let's cover that if we could, as soon as we get into that. We're going to talk about that in more detail. So we'll cover it in just a moment. Patricia, thank you. So you have someone who's gone into the hospital and now you know that certain things are covered. Obviously it's your room, and here we had the notation it was a semi-private room, and Gail and I had the discussion about this earlier because there's many hospitals now that are transitioning to one person in a room, private rooms. They're all doing renovations, and that's happening. But meals, your general nursing, medications, things that happen in the hospital. We have a list here of things that Medicare probably does not cover, but I think the most important line here, most important information is on the bottom where it says the current issue, inpatient versus observation status. And we all assume that if someone goes into the ER, or that's the most common situation, and now they're in the ER right now, unfortunately, because of lack of rooms and many other things and staffing, they're there sometimes longer than they would like to be. I had a friend that went into the ER recently and wasn't here, it was in another state, and he's fairly young. He was in the emergency room without a room to go to for over 2 days. So he was waiting to get a hospital room. Now, often when you're in the ER, they're able to transfer your loved one or the person you're caring for to a hospital room. And we assume then that we're in the hospital, everything's going to be covered, Medicare is going to take care of it. What happens often is that, do you have inpatient or do you have observation status? And what people don't realize is you must have a 3-night minimum stay, first of all, to be total inpatient. And I recently had a client who was in his 90s, lived in a senior community, had an incident. They took him to the hospital through the ER, the EMTs did. He was in the ER. They transferred him to a room. He was in a room for 2 days, and they were doing tests and they were checking things. And his daughter called me and said he's going to be released back to the community today, but thank goodness he was in the hospital and everything's taken care of for cost. And I said, is he an inpatient or observation? And she said, oh, Carol, he's definitely inpatient. I mean, he's been there for 2 days. They've been doing all of this. I said, you need 3 midnights, and I would check on it. And medically, they did not have something they had found that was medically wrong with him. They were going to release him, and he was going to have quite a bill himself that he would be responsible for because he was not officially inpatient. So she was able to get that changed. Gail, did you want to talk about that a little? You mentioned a couple of instances you've had also.
Oh, absolutely. I certainly do. So even with my own family, I have gotten a call from my cousin, and he's been in the ER at that time, was pre-COVID, with my 91-year-old aunt. And he said, you know, my mother fell and, you know, they don't want to admit her. And I said, no, you need to tell them that, you know, there's a reason for your mom falling numerous times. They really need to admit her as opposed to, you know, keep her under observation and then still even discharge her within, you know, 18 hours or so. There has to be a reason why a 91-year-old person is falling. So it's just that I think people aren't informed about that. And I think it's just a way of, you know, asking, you know, just, you know, saying, help me understand, you know, what is the difference between, you know, observation and inpatient, you know, because really the goal is, especially if someone would need some rehabilitation, that you want them to have the 3 midnight stay so they're able to qualify for rehab and you know, Medicare covering it. So that's what I wanted to add. I think it's just very important to be informed about that.
And we do have a question here from Richard. Is the inpatient situation, in other words, I'm think you're referring to the 3 midnights, a function of the state that you live in.
Oh, no, it is it's a federal, Medicare is federal, so therefore, no, it has nothing to do with the individual state or hospital system. Okay, let's
Yeah.
go on. Let's go on to the next, discharge planning.
I think we've got another little, our observation stays all out of pocket. Let's cover that a moment.
Oh, okay.
So when someone's in an observation, I think your room and board at the hospital, as I understand it, are not then covered by Medicare Part A. So you would be liable for that. And I don't know what other costs, because part of your insurance, supplemental and other part of Medicare would pay for testing and that type of thing. But you still can have quite a major bill when you depart. So discharge planning. Per Medicare, and you can find a lot of these types of information and so forth, these overviews on medicare.gov. But through Medicare, they term it discharge, leaving the hospital, a process used to decide what a patient needs for a smooth move from one level of care to another. And I think importantly, a doctor only can authorize the patient's release. The one thing that Gail and I were talking about on this slide is the fact that what you need to know is that the case manager is the key person that really brings everything together. She's really working with all of the people, including the doctor at the hospital, planning the discharge planning. That's often, sometimes it's the nurse, but it's often the person that comes in when you're discharging and reviews all of the discharge rules with you. For an example, if it's a medication, take this at home twice daily, etc. But what does happen is that as they're approaching discharge, they will have a discussion with the patient and or the representative, the family member. I think it's important for us to try to be there when there's discharge discussions. So again, if you can, once the person's in the hospital, and if you're able to get into the hospital at that time, COVID has changed this somewhat, but you often can call in, or they're doing check-in calls with you if possible. Make it clear that you need to be involved in the discussion with the discharge planning. We have a patient here who has had a problem, had an event, or isn't feeling well. And then they start discussing what's going to happen with the discharge planning. And I think we've all been in the situation where we then talk to the patient, our loved one, and say, you know, what is the plan? Are you coming home? What's the date? Oh, they mentioned it. I think it's tomorrow. So you need to really advocate. And advocacy is becoming more and more important, and really a key point when you have anyone that has an event, has a hospital, when you're the caregiver, advocating for that person to whatever extent possible is really very important. But I think most important, in addition to making sure they're getting what's needed and what they are entitled to, most important is the fact it allows you as the caregiver and the main person overseeing and watching their care to have peace of mind, because then you really are in the loop, and making that information available to any team that you're working with at the hospital or wherever is important. Gail, did you want to add some things to this?
No, I think you covered quite a bit, but just also know in terms of getting involved, like you mentioned, in terms of you want to be extremely involved in the discharge process, do know that the hospital's obligation is they're not going to be able to share information with anybody who calls in, even if there's, 7 siblings or whatever. You have to realize that the person who's only the
Power of attorney.
Power of attorney is going to be, they're obligated to share that information with, just,
Right. The one other thing we might mention to you is this is really a good segue here for us for Elderworks while we're talking, because these are the types of things that Elderworks can help you with. And I have, and Gail does also, we have many, many families that call our consultants when they have people in the hospital and start saying, oh, they're discharging them. They've given me a list of places they're going. They're talking about this and that, or they're going to go home. We need care, whatever that might be. They always will give you referrals, but this is a daunting task to get through all of these when in fact you're trying to advocate for people. So you can certainly always call us at Elderworks. It is what we do. We have relationships and partnerships with many care managers, most of the home care agencies, almost all communities and rehabilitation centers, and we can help you plan through that process. Remembering, of course, that we are a non-for-profit 501c3 company and organization. We do not charge for our assistance. Richard has a comment here. I found being involved as much as possible and critical as my dad could not remember everything said to him and couldn't question the doctor or nurse. Absolutely, very good point. Couldn't question them and wouldn't question them probably if they could, because many older adults have always just felt whatever the medical provider tells you or someone of authority that's handling whatever needs you have, whatever they said was fine. So they don't question it, they don't understand it. And I think, Richard, thank you for sharing that. Very good point.
I'm going to go on to the next slide. As you talked about the resources, we did talk a little bit about that. So this might be something that someone might want to take a picture of, only because we find it extremely helpful, and we have given out these resources all along. I have used every single one of them. When your loved one is hospitalized, where you can get that one from the familycaregiver.org. Hospital Discharge Planning, a guide for families and caregivers, available at the Family Caregiver Alliance. Hospitalization for people who have dementia. Well, that is absolutely, helpful. Also, the Hospital Discharge Planning for people who have dementia from Alzheimer's.org, and search, and then you do the search under discharge planning. Hospitalization Happens, a guide to hospital visits for persons with memory loss. They used to, and this one is the National Institute on Aging.gov. They used to have that one in print. I don't know if that is available in print only, but it definitely is available on their website. The Center for Medicare Advocacy at medicareadvocacy.org. All very helpful resources for folks that when they're looking when there is a hospitalization.
Well, in addition to that, we could go to our website as well, elderwerks.org. We have our contact information there. You can always call Gail or myself direct, but you can call the office and they can refer you. So I think that's important as well. We can always help you, but I think these are wonderful resources. We use them. We also publish the Elderwerks Senior Directory. And that is really all the resources that we know of in the state of Illinois for seniors. And it's a wonderful resource guide and directory book, which is available. It's at no charge. We have it available at various places. And Maureen, maybe you can check in and see if the hospital would accept those now at this point. I know that was a bit of a problem during COVID. And also the Arlington Heights Senior Center will be sure they have current directories. We'll get them dropped off at no problem at all. But if you'd circle back with me and let me know that, I can take care of it.
Thank you, will do.
Certainly, thank you.
Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the after the hospital stay.
I told Gail I would talk a little bit about this long-term care acute hospital because I was not aware of it myself. As you know, trying to navigate the medical landscape right now is more difficult than ever. And they are all doing such wonderful work, and we support all of those frontline people and all those who assist them to whatever extent possible. But really knowing the processes is the problem, and that is all part of this planning and knowing where to go to find out what you need. Long-term care acute hospital, I'll give you a quick example of this just as a point of information. It doesn't happen that often in my experience, and I think in Gail's also, in the people that call. However, I had a friend that had very early stage pancreatic cancer. She was elderly, but they were able to do surgery on her, with very extensive surgery. When the hospital stay with Medicare was at a point where she could have normally been released home, she really needed too much oversight. I think we had a little bit of confusion going on, as always happens when we have these events, or very often, I should say, with older adults. And in addition to that, she really didn't have a strong support system at home. She thought she did, but with my friend, I knew personally she really didn't. So her doctor and surgeon and their staff and that whole group through the case manager sent her to this long-term care acute hospital. And she went into Marion Joy, which I thought was for rehab, but I knew she could never do the amount of rehab that they have because it's very extensive. But she was actually there on the long-term care acute hospital. And that means the next step down level from the hospital where they can take you longer, and Medicare does cover it. And when she left there, she was much stronger and able to go home. So if you find that happens or you're not sure about it, that's what it is. And that's sort of the terminology and how it works.
Yeah, I think the medical professionals, when you hear the first, it comes out as LTEC, which again, we don't expect people to understand and know what that was, but there are just too many hospitalizations that would require that. I'm going to go on
But
to the
again,
next
it's on
slide.
Medicare. I'm sorry, Gail, I thought you were done.
Yes, no, I'm done.
And it's on Medicare.gov also.
Yes.
Gail, did you want to talk a little bit about rehab?
I can, absolutely. So the reason why people are going to rehabilitation hospitals, you want to qualify for the Medicare covered and rehabilitation. Again, the physician must certify this type of intensive rehabilitation, this care that is absolutely necessary. Now, no one ever really knows what the length of that time for the coverage is, but just to have an understanding of what is medically necessary, you must require all of the following services to ensure safe and effective treatment. 24-hour access to a physician, meaning you, frequent direct physician involvement at least 2 to 3 days, 24-hour access to a registered nurse with specialized training or experience in rehabilitation, intensive therapy, which means at least 3 hours of therapy per day. Now, there's always some exceptions to the case, just so you know. A coordinated team of other providers, a physician, rehabilitation nurse, and one therapist, and only 25% of patients admitted to these hospitals are there for orthopedic conditions, which is interesting to know. I didn't know that statistic, but that's what the rehabilitation hospital is, acute care rehabilitation. That's the definition of that.
I think we should mention on this slide, Gail, as you and I talked about when we were discussing this before, many families call and automatically assume that the first thing I hear from families with rehabilitation, and I can say in my own family, I thought the same thing when my mother went on at one time and my husband, oh, they have 100 days of covered care. But what you quickly find out is that when you're in rehabilitation and your loved one is there, if they do not continue to make progress, Medicare will no longer pay. So even though you have this 100-day window, so to speak, which there are other specifications on that, often, especially if you're taking an older adult, and I'm thinking maybe from Richard, who shared with us about his father and having some memory issues when they were talking with him and so forth. If you have anyone who has some dementia issues, I can tell you from experience, they're not able to really process and continue making progress the same as perhaps someone who does not. And often what happens is they have a shorter rehabilitation because of that. They really cannot continue on. They don't have the physical ability, and they really are not able to mentally continue making that progress. So they need to be released. I think what happens, and it's difficult, is families have someone in rehabilitation, you've been in the hospital, and now we all think that we have a bit of a breather here. We've got them settled, gee, this is great. And about 10 days later, or shortly after the first or second family meeting, which they always schedule. So what that means is that the care team comes together, they'll give you a time, we're going to talk at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. You can Zoom in or whatever. And I would say have your questions ready because it lasts about 10 to 15 minutes. They're just moving people ahead and they're telling you sort of how it's going and what's happening. And so now you're on the second time that you've met with the care team. And they'll say, well, I think we're going to be able to discharge her on Friday. And this is Wednesday or Tuesday. And you're like, what? They just got here 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago. So you always have to be aware that it is dependent on what type of progress they're making.
Right. And again, I don't know if this is absolutely mentioned, the time that they actually get admitted for rehabilitation, that they say, you know, because again, as you mentioned at the beginning, you think you have that 100 days and that's not always the case. So I don't think it's always explained to the family that it is always, you know, what it depends on the progress. So again, you know, we're always happy to have this discussion with families. Feel free to reach out so we can explain the process. So we can do that with you and answer those questions. Now we're going to go on to skilled care.
Well, just a moment. Sorry, Gail. Richard
question?
has another comment. He said,
Okay.
great point on the 100 days. It is a shock and you get more rehab, but you have to pay out of pocket. The other thing, and that's a good point, Richard, thank you. The other thing I would mention on that quickly is, and people don't realize this, but if you feel that the person may make more, may be able to make more progress, or they're really not quite ready to come home yet, you can ask them to revisit that. You can ask to petition for more days under Medicare. I can almost tell you without much hesitation that 99% of the time right now, with everything that is happening and the amount of people who need assistance, I'm not seeing a lot of those being approved, but it is worthwhile. Yes, to Richard's point, you can sometimes ask for extension, but you go on to private pay. Sorry, Gail, go right ahead.
No, it's quite all right. So now we're going to talk about skilled care facilities. Carol, did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Skilled care facilities. Well, a skilled care facility is what we know as a nursing home care facility. There's several, there's a few researches here on the bottom that you might want to also copy. What I would say to you is skilled care is often, by the time I'm talking to someone about it, it is either private pay or people don't really have the money for that type of care. There's a lot of things to think about skilled care. As it states here, you must have Part A on Medicare before you're discharged from the hospital. And I'm reading down further here now. Medicare will pay the first cost of the first 20 days and part of the cost of another 80 days in a Medicare certified skilled facility. Each benefit period, as long as it's medically necessary. The benefit period begins the day you start getting inpatient care and ends once you've been out of the hospital or the skilled care facility for 60 days. What I would say, my experience with most of my clients, and I have many clients who are caregivers for people who have dementia issues and are older adults. And I've got a fair amount of experience personally, as well as through business on that. We all have a portion of those. I have quite a few myself. Most of the time when people are talking about skilled care, the families I'm talking to, they're often not able to take care of the person at home any longer, or they feel they need to go to skilled care. Sometimes if you're talking about private pay on skilled care, you're talking about 24/7 nursing care. And what you need to realize if you're on a private pay is that it is going to be a higher care level, a higher payment level on private pay than if you were in another level of care. So what I would say to that is, especially in the case of, are you caring for someone who has dementia? It's very interesting because we're going to talk about different care levels shortly, but many people feel that if you have a dementia patient who needs care, they have to go to skilled care. They have to go to nursing home care. That is not the true situation any longer. We have several memory care facilities where that's what they concentrate on, and they have a very high level of care. What I would say is if you're going to a skilled care facility, I always say go online, Medicare.gov, look at what their rating is. In addition to that, do a virtual tour. And if you have a chance, try to visit them before you send someone there. Now, sometimes from the hospital, people are admitted to rehab, and that rehab facility is a rehab and skilled care facility. I always say to the families, when you get that list and they're saying to you, well, research this, you can call us, we can help you with it. Your first response to the case manager is, I have to review these locations before my loved one is transferred. That's very important, because if you do not do that, what they will do is find the first available bed, as we refer to it in the industry, that is open, and they will be transferred. You want to be sure that you know something about it and you have a comfort level with it. But again, when you're in skilled care, it's a more medical environment. You have a larger amount of people that need a variety of type of care. It is extremely important you have an advocate for the person who is there. Go ahead, Gail. Next.
All good points. Now we're going to talk about care options at home. So the home health skilled nursing service, and I think a lot of people also have a question of what is the difference between the home health and nursing and home care non-medical, or also termed as custodial. So again, here's the definition of homebound. Medicare defines homebound to mean that leaving the home requires a considerable and taxing effort, such as needing crutches, a walker, wheelchair, or help from another person. Whether or not you qualify as homebound is decided by a doctor's evaluation of the condition over an extended period of time, not on a daily or weekly basis. Home health, again, leaving home for medical treatment and attending a licensed or accredited adult daycare. Religious service is always permitted. Leaving home for short periods of time for special non-medical events such as family reunion, funeral, graduation should not exclude you from being considered homebound. So just wanted to get the definition out there. Carol, is there anything to add on that?
Well, I think what we could mention is home health, when you're leaving the hospital or leaving a rehabilitation, often they'll say to you, because it's almost without question, that you'll have home health coming in, which is covered by Medicare. And you also will have often occupational or physical therapy, one or both, coming in, and that's covered by Medicare. So often families feel like, oh, this is another set of eyes on what's going on. Yes, that's true. But home health, if you've had it, being released from the hospital, they come in and short periods of time is when they're there. So the nurse comes and she's there for maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I had home health for my husband after an event that he had, who had dementia as well. So I was in that challenge at the same time. And really, the person I had coming in, I had more organization of paperwork, information, double check on medications than she did. And well, I reported her, quite truthfully, and got somebody else. But you need to keep an eye on what's going on. Home health is just that. They come in, they check your vitals, go over what's going on. Yes, they're there to be sure things are progressing in the right direction, but there isn't a lot of time involved. So this is not a caregiver. It is not a backup to being a caregiver. It is not a backup to you as the caregiver. So that's what you have to realize. And if you're getting occupational or physical therapy at home, which most people will, then they will go over and spend time with the loved one that you're caring for, going over what the exercises are, what needs to be done, what they suggest. But now they leave, and you, the caregiver, are there trying to encourage them to continuing this. And basically, it's your responsibility to do that because you want them to continue getting the care. Because again, once they're not going to make more progress, Medicare will not pay for that person to come and oversee. So it is a small training lesson is how I look at it. And then whatever caregivers are in charge.
Well, I just wanted to share the next slide is really, it defines what you just said and reinforces it in terms of what the home health covers, with their role in terms of paying for services that can be performed, safely and effectively. And again, the nurse, what they come in for, whether it is, the vitals or injections and tube feedings and things like that, and the speech and OT and PT, that's what's covered by Medicare, and the guidelines are very clear on what is covered for the home health.
I think we should mention also that if you are an extensive home health need, like feeding tubes and things, catheter changes, that's a little bit different. But general home health that most of us will experience is when you leave the hospital or rehabilitation and they say the home health nurse is coming to visit.
And again, that is usually there is a time for that. So they will give you, say, whether the home health will come in for 2, 3, 4 weeks. It's very specific as to terms of it's determined by the physician who orders it for home health and how long it will be. Whereas what we just mentioned in terms of catheter, that's a whole different series of events performed by home health.
Go ahead, Gail.
So the home health aide, that's requiring skilled services, and the home health aide provides the services that help with the bathing, using, toileting, and only if you require personal care, you do not qualify for the Medicare home care benefit. Medical social services, Medicare pays in full for services only, again, ordered by the physician to help you with social and emotional concerns you have related to your illness. The medical supplies, I think that's important. That's always probably one of the questions that people ask of what does Medicare supplies, how do they get reimbursed for that? It pays in full for certain medical supplies provided by Medicare certified home health agencies. And this is, again, specifically the wound dressings and catheters. I do think that also you can find that information. I think it's pretty clear on the Medicare and home health care on medicare.gov. And then there's a reference here, I'm not quite familiar with it, the Center for Medicare Advocacy, and it references a particular settlement on there to help you understand it better. I think it's also a good point of discussion of when you're starting home health is to find out if it's been defined for how long, again, the individual is going to get the home health, and it always is determined on how they're progressing. And then when is the end and what is covered? and what is responsible, for the family, they're out of pocket. So they have an idea about that going forward.
Right, and there will be someone overseeing that. You will have a contact on that. So always ask as many questions as you need, and don't be concerned about quote unquote bothering them. I mean,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is their job.
It is, and I'm of the firm believer, I think any question is really appropriate. I don't think any
Yeah.
question is inappropriate. You're better off asking about it, and they should know. I mean, they do this every day. So now we're going to address, I know there was a question earlier about
Right.
non-medical in-home help. So I think that, Carol, if we can address that and certainly answer that question for the individuals
Sure,
wanting to know
sure.
about
Thank
cost.
you. So yes, so non-medical in-home health. So essentially, we call this home care resources, is how we refer to it at Elderwerks. And what that really needs is you need somebody to come in and help the loved one with some bathing, oversight bathing, or bathing them, dressing, walking, more interaction, helping with shopping, cooking, housekeeping, all of those types of things. Again, we can help you with that because we deal with almost all the home care agencies. Home care agencies are probably now charging, I always say to families, around $30 an hour. Sometimes it's less than that. So in answer to the question, if you think you're going to get somebody for 24 hours, you're looking at over $700 a day. Now, if you're using the same an agency and the same caregiver, and the caregiver is going to be a live-in and stay at your house, you have to have accommodations for them to sleep, etc. They have to be able to sleep 8 hours overnight, all of this type of thing. Normally then an agency, and we only use bonded and insured agencies, they will work with you on pricing very often. Now, if you need 2 caregivers, one for day and one for night, then again, you're probably paying that $30, maybe $25 an hour. Again, because it's an agency, you're giving them all this time, they may help you. But what you need to remember is if you want someone to come in to just assist you. So this is help for the caregiver taking care of the needs of the person that you're caring for. And one of the things to think about is, what is the experience of the caregiver? What about the person they're going to be caring for? It's an older adult. Is there an issue perhaps that the older adult has English as a second language? Are they diabetic? Are they able to do their own insulin injections, or is someone at home doing them? All of those things should be addressed when you're looking for in-home health assistance resources, not medical, non-medical this is, because you want to get caregivers who are familiar. Now, when you're bringing in a home care resource like this, it is non-medical, so they cannot do diabetic injection. They cannot set up medication. They can watch the person take the medication to say to you, yes, they have taken their medication at noon, for example, but they cannot dispense it. So there's very specific guidelines. So it's very important to make clear what the needs are and to talk with the home care agency and then ask them what experience has this particular caregiver had. The other thing, we have a lot of people that will say, a lot of families that will say, oh, I just need somebody to come in maybe a couple of hours, a couple times a week and help dad or mom with the bath. That is very difficult right now. Most agencies right now have minimums of hours and minimums of days. There's a caregiver shortage because of COVID. And so many people are realizing to a great extent what kind of assistance and resources you need, because they've now seen what difference has happened in really the realistic situation for the person they're caring for and what's happened here. So what I would say to you is you could call us. We can help you with that. But in answer to the question, I think it was from Patricia, probably you're looking at about $25 to $30 an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, if memory serves me correct, sometimes, and again, this was a while back, sometimes if the more or the longer the services were, when you contract with them, you might get a little better rate, but I think it's out the door come COVID. I think they all have minimum shifts right now, in terms of looking at, no less than 6 hours, per shift, things like that. But yeah, just wanted to mention that the prices are vary.
Right. And we do have a Medicaid waiver program for this. If you have a loved one on Medicaid, we have social service representatives that can help you with that. On Medicaid waiver, there are people that are due certain resources. It gives you a couple of options here on where you can go online to look. But let me say that specifics in and out of Medicaid, we do have social service representatives that we can refer you to within Elderwerks that can help you. You are due some services, obviously they are due some care, but I can tell you from experience, because I've had this recently with several families with all that's been happening, that it's difficult scheduling because they also are short on people and it's taking a long time, and your option of getting a consistent same person ongoing is difficult as well. Go ahead, Gail, on the next slide. Thank you.
Sure. Oh, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. I don't know if everyone knows what the durable medical equipment is, but in terms of what's covered by Medicare, they pay 80% of what's the approved amount for certain pieces of medical equipment. And again, walker, wheelchair, and then you pay the remaining 20%.
And again, they can help you with this. The only thing I think we could do a takeaway on this is I have families and I have personal friends who have been in the hospital for whatever. And they said, oh, I had my husband go out and get me a walker. I said, there's specifics on this, on what type you should have and sizes and height and all of that. So at the least, you should coordinate that with the person doing your rehabilitation. And that could be even at the hospital with the case manager. But don't run out and buy something until you know all the specifics and where and can you get assistance on it.
No question about it.
We can
Carol and I,
yeah. This quite quickly.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna, for terminology, we actually have this on the Elderwerks website. So
Right.
I think we can just, for the point of time this morning, just mention what they are: independent living community, continuing care, retirement communities. Basically, it is to start people move in, it possibly independent, and then go through the whole continuum of skilled. And then we can talk to you about the financial part of all these. It is a really lengthy conversation, I might say. So this is something that we can cover in 5 minutes. Again,
excuse me, Gail, continuing care retirement, we should say, are the locations where you buy in ahead of time.
buy in, and I, when people are looking at a continuing care retirement community, we have to just say it's not for everybody. So if there is someone who is, early in age, 71 years old, and is looking for they don't have any family or other support, maybe that is a good option for them, because they will be able to take care of them from the time they move into end of life. So I think it's important to mention that. Assisted living, people always ask us, what's the difference between assisted living and skilled? Well, it's really when people are needing help with multiple activities of daily living, And they still, of course, can thrive and, be part of everything in assisted living. They're just needing help with more things. It's also a social model, which I think is important to mention. So it's not a skilled or clinical like environment. I think that's also important to mention. I always love to talk about supportive living because we need to give credit to in Illinois, the governor who put out the supportive living license out there. It probably goes back maybe 24, 26 years ago. So in terms of this particular program, we're not aware of something like this being funded by the state in another state. We're only familiar with Illinois. So why they developed the supportive living program was as an alternative to the nursing home for people who have lower income, who have disabilities under Medicaid. So if just because someone is financially can't afford, to live independently and all of a sudden they're on Medicaid, it used to be in a skilled nursing environment only. Well, this allows someone to live in a supportive living, again, under Medicaid, the financial piece, through their end of life as well. So they're in a social model. It's not a nursing home, but it really is something that it benefits so many people. So we do love to educate people about that. What it typically looks like, just, it's also an apartment style, usually a studio or one bedroom. They're still living independently. They're getting all their meals and all of the other amenities are included, but just want to emphasize that personal choice, dignity, privacy, and individuality are emphasized in this model. The license for supportive living for the one we're referencing right now is for folks 65 of age and older. Okay, there is another license for supportive living that is 19 through 64. It's not for the purpose of this conversation, but we're happy to have a discussion with you about that.
Yeah, we should mention also, Gail, on supportive living, which you did, but to make it even a little more clear, anyone that is looking at a community that has this special supportive living license, normally it's independent and assisted living only. There are some, but limited, buildings that also have memory care. So that would be taking people on private pay or people who are Medicaid or have lower amount of money, less funds, and when it's depleted, transitioning to Medicaid. All the others, independent, assisted living, and memory care, those are private pay, the communities. And those particular communities, you have a 30-day out, so to speak. So with 30 days notice, you could depart. If you went into a continuing care where you buy in initially, that's through end of life and they take care of everything. So then we have nursing homes. We've talked about that, skilled care. Sheltered care is really the highest level of care under skilled. There are some communities that offer sheltered care. So again, if you have somebody in a memory care community and that memory care generally can keep them through end of life, they probably have a sheltered care license or have very high level of expertise and experience and training. Special care units. These are all very involved conversations. Special care here shows through with dementia. We have many wonderful communities, private pay, that concentrate totally on memory care. Shared housing, do you want to say a little something about that, Gail?
So shared housing, it's not always offered, it's really more by county in terms of what the shared housing is. It's a wonderful benefit for people, again, who are needing some help financially. So it's kind of like a matchmaking service, for the most part, what it is. So you have to, again, you can ask us about the shared housing. It's not available in all counties. We can tell you what the criteria of it is. So let's say there is a individual who has a financial hardship. they have a large home, they're needing some additional income, they might be able to get someone to help them with some groceries or some laundry, and they charge them rent, so it's minimal, so that's shared housing with that. So I just wanted to share some of that with it. And again, there's some more resources for everyone to look at about nursing homes, skilled nursing. You can always reference Elderwerks. There's a lot of resources and articles there.
And I would say also, if you're looking at anyone moving, if you're looking at your loved ones or looking, can I continue keeping them at home? And you won't be able to probably do that forever. You may be able to, or through end of life, but sometimes it becomes difficult. Things happen we don't plan on. Call Elderwerks. We can talk to you about it. These are all things that are very specific. It takes a long period of time to sort out for you on your side what you're going to do. And once you realize that you need more resources, just call us and we can help you and direct you, and we will travel that journey with you to whatever amount of time and care you need as far as support. We deal with all resources for seniors and older adults, elder law attorneys who are excellent. Certainly, they are very familiar with all the Medicare, Medicaid specifics. They refer to us. We support their business. They support ours. We don't pay each other. We help each other out. So our clients have a full continuum of assistance, and we always are happy to give those resources.
Care managers, I always like to refer to a care manager. Now, this is someone that you might hire to help you through this entire process. Yes, we're happy to help you at Elderwerks with all this, but someone had told me once, a care manager, she told me that she was referenced from a daughter as a spare daughter to help, because sometimes there are individuals where their adult children live out of state, and then their parent is located here, and they need someone to really be that oversight individual. So they can act as a liaison, helping with conversations with physicians and coordinate all other services. But they're really an extra set of eyes. So that is really, I think, I don't know when care managers started to be an area that, but I know that Carol and I and our other team members at Elderwerks often refer to care managers, because it's just a little bit more than we're able to do, and let the family know. I think they need to bring in help with oversight for their loved one. And how you can find a care manager, other than, of course, contacting us, especially even if you have a loved one out of state, there's a national association called Aging Life Care Association. All you have to do is find a care manager, put in a zip code, and it gives you all a list of the care managers within 10, 25 miles of the area. And I also will mention that generally a care manager is one of the following. It could be a social worker, or it could be a nurse, or it can be both in many cases. So do know that sometimes, especially if there's having some, issues with the medication management, not really sure, parent is confused, it might take a nurse, a care manager, to help with this situation.
And you can use a care manager. They come in and do an assessment. There's a reasonable charge for that, and I can't tell you what it is, but I think between probably $200 and $300 plus is what it is on the one-time assessment, approximately. And then from there, you use that care manager as much or as little. So if you have someone in the hospital and very complicated problems coming on, and now they come home, or you need more oversight to really work through all the medical issues, that would be a care manager. They can also go to the doctor's appointments and then translate all that medical short-term information we get in jargon to what it actually means. So they're very, very helpful. And I think this is from transitions, and we'll cover this quickly, but what we want you to really know is that another resource available to you is called Palliative Care. Palliative Care is always available through a hospice organization. Hospice is not just end of life any longer. So Palliative Care is consultative medical care by a team, so that physicians, advanced practice nurses, etc., and they promote quality of life. And the premise of it is supporting the person who can more effectively allow a person to live well, if it's the goal is to cure or care. So really, if they're receiving a lot of treatments or they have age-related conditions that are going on, and you need sort of, I think of it as a quarterback for the team and kind of another set of eyes on things. Palliative care is for the most part covered by Medicare as well. So you can call us. We work with Transitions often, who's assisted us with this presentation, and we've collaborated on these particular pieces of information and slides. And they will then contact you. They'll come out or have a phone conversation. There's no obligation on any of this. This is what you should understand. So it's a way for you to have more resources as a caregiver. Gail, I think we can continue.
Yeah, I think so.
End of life hospice care, you're all aware of that. Unfortunately, people panic when they say that, but at the appropriate time, the support of everything they can do is wonderful. And if you have really a terminal medical condition, it's definitely something to think about. If you're the one that's going to approach your loved one, or you're thinking, I'm wondering if we need hospice, I think a good first step is to talk to them about palliative care. We'll have a nurse practitioner coming in and they can assist us. And that's a way to sort of open the door to the person you're caring for without actually having them think that you're moving them to hospice immediately or concerned about it. And then the palliative care coordinator can talk to them and determine from there if, you know, they're appropriate. And then of course, end of life care. And we have so many options there and so many. This is a slide you might want to take a photo of. If we have other questions, let's see, put them in the family caregiver support. Well, this is for caregivers, and God bless all of you who are.
Yes.
I just took a look at who is attending while I have the list here, and I do see one of my very favorite caregivers and wonderful people taking care of her mother is on here. Thank you very much, Chris, for coming on. Sorry, I had to add that quick personal note. You know, there's caregiver support. We have groups, support groups. Again, here's more information. We can always get these resources out to you as well. I mean, this is not a quick topic, as you can see. There's so many in-depth pieces of information. Do we have other questions? Or Maureen, did you want to jump in? Gail, are we at the end of this? Yeah, good, thank you.
We are.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure. I just wanted to add some of the Medicare confusion. A lot of times people do have Medicare supplement plans that pick up some of the scary extra that Medicare doesn't cover.
Yes.
And then it brings in a whole new ball of wax when people have Medicare Advantage plans, because there's 52 different options within that.
Absolutely.
So it's very individualized. But a lot of times those, you know, when you hear you have to pay 20% of this or that, oftentimes the person's supplement plan does pick that up, which is, but yeah, thank you so much. Very informative.
Well, thank you. I see that Richard has another question. Are Elderwerks services limited to the state of Illinois? We are local within the state of Illinois. We do cover a little bit of Wisconsin and Indiana, but let me say, Gail, you're on mute incidentally, if you wanted to say something. Let me say that if in fact you're in another state and challenged with this, feel free to call us. We can always try to help you.
Right. We're always, and trust me, we'll do whatever we can in terms of the research for out of state. Yes, we're located here, but we do have resources out of state, just not as vast as we do have here.
Absolutely. We should give you our main number at the office, which is 847-462-0885. And Gail and I each have our direct numbers, but you've got a lot of information today. Call the office and ask for either one of us, Carol or Gail, and they can get you to us right away. Well,
Okay.
thank you all for coming in today. Let me see if we have no, I think that's it. We've covered everything. We appreciate your time and patience, and we're here to help.